Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of Motion 507 for a number of reasons. First of all, back to the beginning, the importance of property rights. I've read somewhere where it's stated that property rights is where individual rights begin, individuals' rights and responsibilities, and society and government's rights end. The opportunity to know clearly where government can be involved, should be involved, and is not welcome to be involved. Also, the value of property rights, past just real property, from the economic advantage. And I spoke in this House in the past about, in my constituency, some of the 5th and 6th generation ranchers that have been tremendous stewards of the land, on leased land and on deeded land for many, many generations. I spoke about how the value that it can be accrued and increased from situations where different types of leases, different types of property rights occur and can be sold. I spoke of how Walmart bought some leases from Target and Zellers for over $1 billion. That as a society we were able to tax and applaud these individuals build their wealth. I also want to talk about how it touches on the Alberta advantage. The importance of property rights, the importance of being a clear jurisdiction with the best property rights can go a long, long way. We're very, very blessed in Alberta with our royalty, our oil and gas, and our other natural resources. But with the recent passing of a great leader, Premier Klein, and we're reminded that he had to make some serious changes to protect some of the mistakes that have been made. And at a time that we're revisiting deficit and debt, we're still being, as a province, reminded by independent agencies like CFIB that we haven't done the best job of eliminating red tape, that we're possibly looking at tax increases to amend the situation, a certain situation where Alberta as a leader in property rights is only going to help us stay competitive, create jobs and wealth for all of our citizens. And I'm not the only one that shares in that belief. I wish to quote our Minister of Municipal Affairs from August 20th, 2011, in a debate for the PC leadership after Bill 10 had been passed. And of course, Bill 10 was the bill that was struck to create or fix some of the errors that Bill 36, 24, 19, and 50 had made, and the huge uproar of many Alberta citizens. What we need in this province, and I'm quoting, is a blue ribbon panel of land experts and landowners to come up with some recommendation on how those 4 pieces of legislation need to be fixed, and also come up with recommendations on how we can resolve this property rights issue once and for all. And the most interesting part of the quote to me, because, he goes on to say, because you cannot have a good democracy and you do not have a strong economy without security of property rights. August 20th, 2011, PC leadership debate. Now, some interesting things that I've noticed about how many Albertans feel about how secure our property rights are. 440,000 Albertans voted for the Wild Rose in the election, many of them because of our stance on property rights. As our critic for sustainable resource development said a short time ago, over 9,000 South Saskatchewan River Basin Albertans that are affected by that have signed a petition asking for that to be reviewed. I've been to 4 or 5 meetings in Cypress-Medicine Hat over the last 2 years where somewhere between 200 and 250 constituents and Albertans have stood up and expressed concern, sometimes very, very serious in their nature, as to the concern about the way these bills were written, the way these bills are written. I believe I heard an honourable member from the other side say something about single words, single sentences in these bills. Well, when the single sentences say something like, with not getting access to the Expropriation Act or due process, of course it's very, very alarming. And I was at a meeting before the election at the Cypress Centre with politicians and candidates and MLAs of all stripes, where the government moderator from Stantec ended the meeting by standing loud and clear to this meeting of 250 people. We have heard you loud and clear. We promised to listen. We have heard you loud and clear. You have said, repeal Bill 36, 19, 24, and 50. Funny we still have it. I don't believe it's a difference of opinion, but let's say it is. Here is something that the Premier said the same night, August 20th, 2011. And I quote, "Got to protect property rights. Have to understand none of this legislation works if Albertans aren't behind it." 440,000, excuse me, that's not part of the quote. Back to the quote. So if this legislation isn't reflecting what Albertans want, then government needs to amend legislation. So Bill 19, owners have to be able to trigger expropriation. Bill 36, suspend it until we amend it to deal with compensation, consultation, and access to the courts. I guess it's impossible to know what somebody really meant when they said these words, but it appears that if Albertans aren't behind it, 9,000 on a petition, 440,000 have voted for Wild Rose, hundreds in rooms asking for these bills to be repealed. That sounds like not behind it to me. One more quote from that debate that's interesting, and back to the Minister of Municipal Affairs. People don't trust the PC government because the government hasn't admitted for quite some time when it's made a mistake. I was around when the Premier used to say, "I screwed up," and people used to smile and laugh and say, "Go fix it." And they did. But we have not, for the last few years, been willing to admit that we have made a mistake, and there are mistakes in those pieces of legislation. The quote ends, and I would ask the government, and again in my support of Motion 506, smile and laugh and go fix it.